This video is about German cities that were born from the ashes of war. Subscribe for more. In the winter of 1945, as the skies over Berlin darkened with smoke of destruction and the echo of artillery faded into a grim silence, a new chapter began in the heart of Europe. Among the rubble, a group of survivors dared to dream, their spirit unbroken even as the world around them lay in ruins. Among them was Anna Weiss, a determined young woman whose family had endured the horrors of war in ways few could comprehend. Anna had lived her entire life in a city that had transformed from a hub of culture and innovation into a landscape scarred by conflict. The once vibrant streets of Berlin, filled with laughter and music, now echoed only with a sense of sorrow and despair. The war had taken her father, a baker, and her mother struggled daily to put food on the table, scavenging through the remnants of their shattered neighborhood for anything edible. The war wasn't just an event, it was her reality. Meanwhile, in a distant corner of Europe, American soldier David Carter found himself grappling with the aftermath of the war's destruction. Having landed in Normandy during the D-Day invasions, he fought through Europe, witnessing firsthand the devastation wrought by the Nazis. With his comrades, he liberated towns, yet each victory felt like a hollow triumph in a land where the consequence of freedom was chaos. The faces of the liberated residents haunted him, a reminder that liberation was not merely about the end of oppression but the struggle to rebuild after the fighting ceased. As the Allied forces pushed further into Germany, David was stationed in Berlin. The city was a compound of chaos and confusion, housing survivors who were not only rebuilding their lives but also grappling with a deep-seated sense of loss and betrayal. David had come to see the German populace not as the enemy but as fellow human beings caught in the crossfire of fate's a complex tangle of poverty, guilt, and resilience. On a fateful morning, as Anna scavenged for supplies, she stumbled upon a makeshift camp where American soldiers were offering aid to locals. Among them stood David, his uniform marking him as a symbol of hope, though the grim determination in his eyes reflected the burden he carried. Anna felt a mix of fear and curiosity. The soldiers were the faces of the enemies her family had fought against, but they were also the ones who held the key to their survival and the possibility of a new beginning. In a chance encounter, the two locked eyes. Anna approached hesitantly, unsure if the soldier could understand her plight. "Please," she said, her voice trembling, "we need food, anything you can spare." David, taken aback by the courage radiating from this young woman, nodded. He motioned to a crate filled with rations, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what these provisions meant to her. In that moment, a connection formed two souls from opposite sides of a war, brought together by desperation and the shared hope for peace. The tension in the air was palpable. Anna's memories of German soldiers were laced with anguish. They had once occupied her home with booted feet and cruel laughter. Yet here was David, not an enemy, but a man trying to do right in a world gone wrong. They exchanged words, their language barrier softened by the universal dialect of humanity. Anna learned about the American way of life, the freedoms her family had fought against from the inside, and for a moment she saw a glimpse of what her city could be once more. As the days turned into weeks, Anna and David's paths crossed more frequently. They shared stories of their past, weaving together the tragic threads of war into a tapestry of understanding. Anna spoke of her dreams to see Berlin rise from the ashes, to see its people unite, while David revealed his guilt over the lives lost and the civilians caught in the crossfire. Together, they struck a deal that would begin to change the world. "Help me gather the survivors," Anna urged one cold evening, her determination igniting a fire in David's heart. "We can create something beautiful from this despair. We need to show that even in the face of ruin, we can find hope." David, inspired by Anna's spirit, agreed. With a small group of soldiers, he set out to assist her in gathering the remnants of their community, those willing to work together to reclaim their city. News of their efforts spread like wildfire as Anna and David organized gatherings in the square, where the community began to assemble. Germans, Americans, and even displaced Jews who had lost everything joined them. There was tension among some, old wounds ran deep, and the memories of betrayal and loss were still fresh. Yet, the shared experience of survival began to foster an unspoken bond. Through the rubble, the group began to clear debris, salvage materials, and even forge makeshift shelters. With each day, they transformed the desolate landscape into a canvas for a new life. But as their efforts grew, so did the whispers of dissent. Not everyone was pleased with this unexpected alliance, especially the remnants of the extremist factions who felt betrayed by the notion of cooperation. Their leaders moved in the shadows, plotting to undermine the fragile hopes of the community. Meanwhile, in Israel, far from the destruction ravaging Europe, another story began to unfold. The Jewish people, having faced their own horrors during the Holocaust, were fighting for a homeland. Amidst the tensions of war, they longed for a place of safety, free from the chains of oppression. The echoes of Berlin's struggles reached the shores of the Mediterranean. The narratives of loss and resilience intertwined, forming a shared history that transcended borders. As Anna and David's coalition began to take shape, word of their initiative reached the ears of Israeli leaders, who saw the potential for a powerful symbol of hope in the conflict-ridden world. They recognized that if a German girl and an American soldier could unite to rebuild, perhaps it was a message the world needed to hear, a testament to the belief that reconciliation was possible, even in the depths of despair. However, as the coalition gained momentum, so did the danger. The remnants of extremist ideologies began to stir, emboldened by fear and anger over the potential loss of their power. Threatening messages were sent to Anna, warning her to abandon her plans or face dire consequences. The struggle for peace and unity now came with a perilous cost, and both Anna and David knew they were standing on the edge of a precipice. As tensions escalated, a shadow loomed over their efforts. The coalition's resilience would soon be tested, not just by external forces but by the very doubts that threatened to unravel the fragile bond forged in the fires of war. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure could mean not only the end of their dreams but also a return to the darkness that had consumed Europe. As they met in secret, Anna turned to David, her eyes alight with determination. "We've come too far to turn back now." David nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Their alliance was more than a quest for survival. It was a battle against the shadows of hatred that threatened to engulf them again. The dawn of a new era was on the horizon, but it would take more than bravery to seize it. The world watched as the embers of war flickered, and the question remained, could hope truly rise from the ashes of destruction? Their journey was only beginning, and as they prepared for the trials ahead, a storm was brewing, one that would test their courage, forge new alliances, and challenge the very essence of humanity itself. Would they prevail against the tides of division, or would the clutches of the past drag them back into darkness? The fate of their fragile coalition hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of destruction, as they set forth to uncover not just the truth of their own histories, but the promise of a shared future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the devastated streets of Berlin, Anna and David gathered the coalition at a makeshift headquarters, a crumbling building adorned with tattered banners of solidarity. The flickering oil lamps struggled to illuminate the faces of men and women who had once been enemies, now united under the banner of hope. The room buzzed with energy, a mix of determination and underlying fears. Whispers of dissent lingered in the air. Anna stood at the front, her heart pounding. "We are here not just to rebuild the city, but to reshape our future," she proclaimed, her voice steady despite the uncertainty surrounding them. "Together, we can create a Berlin that stands as a testament to resilience, a place where our children will not know the horrors we've faced." The crowd responded with nods of agreement, yet Anna could see the glimmer of doubt in some eyes. David stepped forward, his American accent ringing out in a hushed room. "We've seen the horrors of war, but we're also witnessing the power of unity. Let us show those who would tear us apart that we will not be silenced." His words ignited a spark of enthusiasm, the crowd responding with cautious cheers. In the days that followed, the coalition's members took to the streets, armed with brooms and shovels, clearing the rubble and debris that had once been homes and businesses. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay, but alongside the smell of destruction, there was an undercurrent of hope. Laughter sometimes broke through the solemnity as children, once terrified, played amid the ruins, their innocence a reminder of what they were fighting for. But with each day of progress, the threat of violence loomed ever closer. The extremists, feeling their grip on the community slipping, became bolder in their actions. Graffiti began to appear overnight, threatening messages scrawled across the walls. "This is our city. Leave or face the consequences." A fear crept into the hearts of some coalition members, and whispers spread of abandoning their efforts. One evening, after a particularly tense meeting, Anna and David found themselves walking through the dimly lit streets of Berlin. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and as they paused at the remnants of a once bustling cafe, Anna leaned against the wall, her breath coming in shaky gasps. "What if we can protect this?" she asked, vulnerability etched in her features. "What if they tear it all down before we even get started?" David turned to her, his eyes dark with concern. "We've made a choice, Anna. There will always be those who fear change, but we cannot let them dictate our future. Look around, every brick you see here tells a story of resilience. We must add to that story." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, feeling the weight of hope and despair intertwined in that moment. Their resolve was tested the very next day when an explosion rattled the ground beneath them. It erupted in a nearby neighborhood, shaking the very core of the coalition. Smoke billowed into the sky, dark and ominous, as the coalition members rushed toward the sound, hearts pounding in their chests. As they arrived, chaos reigned, people screamed, others wept, and the reality of their fragile progress threatened to crumble in an instant. Anna's heart raced as she pushed her way through the crowd, searching for familiar faces. David, as she shouted, her fear spurring her on. He emerged from the smoke, bloodied but unbroken, helping injured civilians from the wreckage. She cried, her voice piercing through the din of panic. Together, they organized a rescue effort, working alongside frightened locals to aid those trapped beneath the rubble. The power of their alliance flickered brightly amid the devastation. German, American, and Jewish hands joined together in a race against time, pulling survivors from the wreckage while shouting words of encouragement. Anna's determination surged as she dug deeper, fueled by the shared hope they were building. Hours passed, and as the last survivor was rescued, the coalition members collapsed to the ground, exhaustion washing over them like a tidal wave. In the aftermath of the explosion, David gripped Anna's hand tightly. "This is why we fight," he said, breathing heavily. "For these people, for a new Berlin." But as their victory settled in, the dark clouds of conflict swirled closer. The remnants of the extremist factions, enraged by the coalition's growing influence, launched attacks on the members, targeting them individually while spreading deceitful rumors in their communities. The threat of violence loomed heavily, and fear gripped many hearts. Yet Anna and David refused to back down. They convened clandestine meetings, plotting a course not just to survive but to thrive. Change began to seep into the city like the early spring thaw. Neighborhoods that had once stood divided started to collaborate. Stories flooded in from all corners of the city, tales of resilience and courage inspiring others to join the cause. Anna and David organized cultural exchanges where residents shared their culinary traditions, music, and stories, weaving a tapestry of unity out of the threads of their unique pasts. As the coalition blossomed, word reached Israel of their endeavors. Leaders began to see a flicker of hope in the darkness, recognizing that the fight for a homeland was not only about land, but about the spirit of humanity itself. They watched as Anna and David's story unfolded to two souls linked by loss, willing to transcend their histories to embrace a shared future. In Berlin, however, the extremist faction was not idle. Under the cover of darkness, they began their campaign of sabotage, targeting the gatherings that had become the lifeline of the coalition. Bombs were planted in the heart of their community celebrations, each act of violence meant to instill fear and dismantle the fragile hope they had built. One fateful evening, as the coalition held a concert to celebrate their unity, the first notes of a haunting melody filled the air only to be interrupted by a deafening explosion. Panic erupted as chaos unfolded, and Anna found herself on the ground, dazed. David's voice cut through the clamor, urging her to move, to escape the pandemonium that threatened to swallow them whole. The world around them blurred as they navigated through the dust and debris, urgency driving them forward. Heartbeats raced, the line between survival and despair narrowing with every step. "We have to get to the others," David shouted, scanning the faces of the crowd frantically. In that moment, Anna's determination crystallized. The fight was no longer just for her city, it was for the very essence of humanity, the ability to choose hope over hatred. "We can let them win," she yelled back, rallying the few who remained near her. "Together, we will rise." As they emerged from the chaos, Anna locked eyes with David, both aware that the next fight would decide the fate of their mission. The coalition was not merely a group of survivors, it was a battleground of ideals, a testament to the notion that unity could blossom from the ashes of war. But lurking beyond the shadows, the extremists planned their next move, emboldened by their perceived power. Anna and David stood at the precipice of a new social order, but the journey ahead grew perilous. Would the power of their alliance withstand the onslaught, or would the echoes of violence drown out their dreams of peace? As they faced the uncertainty of their future, the promise of dawn lingered on the horizon, but the question remained, how much longer could hope survive when darkness threatened to reclaim what little light had emerged? The sounds of sirens pierced through the singed air as Anna and David emerged from the chaos, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The concert had been a celebration of unity, and now it lay in ruins, smoldering wreckage strewn across the square. The once vibrant music had become a haunting reminder of the hatred that still lurked in the shadows. Around them, terrified survivors stumbled out of the debris, some crying out for loved ones, others in shock as they tried to comprehend what had just transpired. David shouted, pointing to a group of coalition members huddled together near a partially destroyed wall. Anna didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward them, her heart pounding in her chest. The fear that gripped her was palpable, but it was overshadowed by an unwavering resolve. "We need to regroup," she shouted as they approached, urgency driving her voice. Among the group was Hans, an elder man who had quickly become a pivotal figure in the coalition. His face was smeared with dust, but his expression was resolute. "Anna, David, we must assess the damage and help the injured. This attack was meant to break us, but we cannot allow it." Together, they gathered whatever supplies they could find: bandages, water, and food. As they worked, the flames flickered in the distance, casting eerie shadows across the faces of those who had once stood as adversaries but were now united in their quest for a new Berlin. "David, I can't lose this momentum," Anna said fiercely, wiping sweat from her brow. "We need to show them that hope can survive even in this darkness." "I agree," he replied, his brow furrowed with determination. "But we must be careful. These extremists are becoming desperate. We need a plan, one that not only protects us but rallies the community to our side." Hours turned into days, and the remnants of the coalition worked tirelessly. News of the bombing spread throughout the city, igniting a spark of outrage among the local populace. Those who had once been hesitant to join Anna and David's cause now felt the urgent need to rise against the threats that sought to tear them apart. Anna and David held a meeting at Hans's apartment, a small gathering that felt heavy with purpose. The room was filled with tension as they discussed their next move. "We must arrange a citywide rally," Hans suggested, his voice steady. "A show of solidarity that will demonstrate to everyone, those in support of our movement and those against it, that we will not back down." "They agreed," David said, his eyes brightening. "But we need to ensure that we have security measures in place. We can't let fear control us, but we also can't be reckless." Anna nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "Let us invite local leaders, those who have been affected by the fighting. We can have speeches and music, something to remind people of joy, to drown out the hatred." As they set their plan into motion, Anna reached out to local radio stations, spreading the word about the rally. David and Hans organized volunteer security teams, ensuring that the event would run smoothly. They worked through the night, fueled by the hope that flickered like a candle in the darkness. On the day of the rally, the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the square where they had once celebrated in joy. Now, it served as a stage for their resilience. As people gathered, Anna stood at the front, her heart pounding with anticipation. The fear that had gripped her initially was replaced by a fierce determination as she surveyed the crowd. David stood beside her, his presence a steadying force against the tide of uncertainty. "Remember, this is about more than us," he said, locking eyes with her. "We are standing for anyone who has suffered. This is our stand against division." As the rally kicked off, a hush fell over the crowd. Anna stepped up to the makeshift podium, her voice steady and clear. "Today, we stand together, not as Germans, Americans, or Jews, but as human beings. We have suffered enough at the hands of hatred and division. It is time to rise from the ashes as one family." The crowd erupted into applause, the sound reverberating against the buildings like a battle cry against despair. People began to share their stories, recounting the pain of loss, the struggle for survival, and the hope that had kept them moving forward. "Together, we can create a Berlin that embodies the spirit of resilience," David added, stepping up to the podium after Anna. "A city where our children will play free of fear, where love conquers hate. Let this be a new beginning." As the rally continued, the atmosphere shifted from despair to determination. But in the shadows, the extremists watched with simmering fury. This gathering symbolized everything they detested. In the coming weeks, the coalition began to rebuild homes, libraries, and parks, each brick laid standing testament to their unity. Children laughed as they played among the ruins, while adults worked side by side, their differences momentarily forgotten. Yet the threat from the extremists loomed larger than ever. Late one night, Anna received a message. It was not just a threat, it was a declaration of war against their efforts. "They want us to fail, Anna," David said as they read the words together, tension rising in his voice. "We must act quickly. I won't let them intimidate us," Anna said, her resolve crystallizing. "We need to prepare for whatever they have planned. We'll hold another meeting, and we'll be ready." As they mobilized their coalition, whispers of their success began to spread beyond Berlin. Israel's leaders took notice, recognizing the potential of this movement to serve as a beacon of hope amidst the struggles. They reached out, proposing a partnership to strengthen their message of unity against oppression. However, the extremist faction was relentless. They plotted, waiting for the right moment to strike when the coalition would be at its weakest. As tensions in Berlin grew, news of their efforts began to seep into the broader European narrative, sparking debates about reconciliation and healing that echoed from London to Warsaw. The rallying cries of hope faced an imminent challenge. The extremists, determined to cast a shadow over the burgeoning unity, prepared for their final assault. It would not just be a test of Anna and David's resolve, it would be a confrontation between the very ideals that defined humanity: love versus hate, unity versus division. The days ticked by with a palpable tension in the air, the coalition fervently preparing for their next move as Anna and David found themselves at the heart of a battle that rippled far beyond the borders of Berlin. Hope was on the line, but so was their existence. And as they stood together under the dim lights of the makeshift headquarters, Anna felt the weight of history pressing down upon them. They were not just fighting for a city, they were fighting for the future of humanity itself. In that moment, an explosion shattered the night, shaking the very foundation of their dreams. "Get down," David shouted, pulling Anna to the ground as debris rained down around them. The extremists were here, and this was only the beginning. As the world around them erupted in chaos, Anna could only wonder if their fragile coalition could withstand the storm. Would they emerge from this darkness, or was it too late for hope to survive? A battle for their future had begun, and they were about to discover just how far they were willing to go to protect the dream they had forged together. The explosion echoed through the night, a harsh reminder that the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build was under siege. Anna gasped, her heart racing as dust and debris settled around them. David gripped her arm, pulling her closer as they ducked behind the remnants of a crumbling wall. "We need to get to safety," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the ringing in her ears. With determination, they pushed through the chaos, moving swiftly to regroup with the coalition members. The streets, once filled with laughter and hope, were now war-zone. Shouts and cries of agony filled the air, drowning out the music they had once celebrated. They had hoped that their rally would symbolize unity, but now it stood as a battleground for their very existence. As they stumbled towards the makeshift headquarters, Anna's mind raced. She thought of the community they had built, the children who had played freely, and the dreams they had dared to create. "We can't let them take this from us," she whispered fiercely. David nodded, his expression resolute as they entered the dimly lit building. Inside, panic and confusion ruled. Coalition members were scrambling to secure the area, tending to the injured, while others barricaded the doors. In the chaos, Hans emerged from a back room, his face grim yet determined. "We have to act quickly," he said, his voice steady despite the fear swelling around them. "We can't let this violence intimidate us. We need to plan our next steps." Anna felt an electric charge of urgency. "They need to know they aren't here alone, and that we are still fighting for them." Her words ignited something in the room, and they began formulating a strategy, the atmosphere charged with a mix of fear and unyielding resolve. In the days that followed, they worked round the clock. They organized emergency meetings to provide aid to those affected by the bombing while simultaneously preparing for the extremists' next move. David became a central figure for the young soldiers, rallying them to protect the coalition's vision. Meanwhile, Anna took charge of communication, broadcasting their need for unity through any means available: leaflets, word of mouth, and clandestine radio messages. "We will not be silenced by fear," Anna declared at a gathering, her voice steady. "This is our home, and we will reclaim it together." The crowd erupted in cheers, emboldened by her unwavering spirit. The coalition began to grow in numbers again, as those who had once hesitated now flocked to her side, recognizing the strength in unity. But the extremists were far from defeated. They launched a series of coordinated attacks on their gatherings, spreading fear like a poison through the community. Each explosion shattered the fragile peace, yet each act of violence only seemed to strengthen their resolve. "They think they can intimidate us," David said, his eyes ablaze with passion as they prepared for their next rally. As more citizens joined their cause, Anna and David organized a massive citywide event in the heart of Berlin, a concert to celebrate resilience and rebuild the spirit of the community. They invited musicians and speakers from all backgrounds, showcasing the rich culture they had fought to preserve. "This concert will be more than just a celebration," Anne insisted. The day of the concert arrived, and the square was alive with energy. People from all walks of life filled the area, faces lit with hope, voices rising in harmony. The music flowed, each note a reminder of joy amidst the scars of conflict. On stage, Anna stood tall, her heart racing as she addressed the crowd. "Today, we gather not just as Germans, Americans, or Jews, but as one community, united in our resolve to rise above hatred. Together, we are stronger." As the crowd erupted in applause, David stood nearby, watching the faces around him light up with determination. Each smile, every cheer, was a testament to the resilience that had emerged from their shared suffering. For a fleeting moment, the shadows of violence felt distant, and the promise of a brighter future flickered at the edge of reality. But lurking in the shadows, the extremists plotted their revenge. They watched the concert with a simmering rage, their numbers growing as they convinced others that the coalition represented a threat to their beliefs. It wasn't too long before their plans coalesced. The final strike meant to shatter the bonds that had formed. As the concert reached its peak, David spotted a group moving through the crowd, faces masked with intent. "Anna, over there," he shouted, pointing. Panic surged through Anna as she realized the danger. "We need to warn everyone." In an instant, the mood shifted. The music faltered, and murmurs spread through the crowd as Anna and David raced toward the stage, their voices rising above the chaos. "Everyone, listen. We are in danger. Please remain calm and move to the exits." The crowd, initially in disbelief, turned into a wave of fear as the masked figures drew closer. Simon, a young soldier who had become a vital part of their efforts, positioned himself protectively in front of Anna and David. He shouted determination as shook across his face. Anna cried, desperation flooding her voice. "We have to stick together." But the figures surged forward and chaos erupted. People screamed as they rushed to escape, and Anna felt an overwhelming sense of dread as she watched the unity they had built begin to unravel. David grabbed her hand tightly, pulling her along as they fought against the tide of panic. He shouted over the din, pushing through the frantic crowd. They weaved through the crowd, chaos swelling around them, but their goal was clear: to protect what they had fought so hard to build. As they reached the perimeter of the square, they turned to see Simon and a few other coalition members engaged in a standoff against the extremists. The air crackled with tension as the two sides faced off, desperate for resolution but aware that this moment could ignite a larger conflict. "Stay together," David yelled to the coalition members. With that, he turned to Anna, his voice fierce but steady. "We need to show them we won't back down. Gather everyone to form a shield." The realization struck Anna like lightning. They needed to embody the very spirit of unity they had fought for. A shield against hatred would stand far stronger than any weapon. Anna nodded, her heart ignited with purpose. She turned to the crowd, a mix of fear and determination sparkling in her eyes. "We stand together as one. Form a circle. Protect each other." Slowly, the crowd began to respond. People moved closer together, creating a barrier around those still trapped within the chaos. The once frightened faces transformed into expressions of defiance, each person understanding the collective strength they wielded. The extremists hesitated before advancing towards the newly formed human wall, unsure of how to breach this united front. "We are here to fight for a future free of fear," Anna shouted, her voice ringing clear and strong. As the standoff continued, something remarkable began to happen. Those who had once been hesitant to embrace the coalition stepped forward, joining hands with their neighbors. The barrier grew thicker, a testament to the resolve that had blossomed from the ashes of war. "The power of unity is greater than hatred," David yelled, his voice blending with the chorus of those around him. "We are not just fighting for ourselves, we are fighting for every soul who believes in peace." In that moment, the tide began to turn. The extremists, confronted by the unbreakable spirit of the coalition, faltered, their resolve wavering. The crowd grew bolder, chanting words of resistance that echoed through the square, drowning out the echoes of hate. As the clash reached its peak, Anna felt a surge of confidence wash over her. "Together, we can rebuild," she shouted once more, and the crowd erupted in a unified cry of affirmation. "Together, we will stand." The extremists, unable to withstand the collective voice of the community, began to retreat, confusion written across their faces. The coalition had become a force of defiance, and with each step backward the extremists took, the victorious shouts of the coalition grew louder. As the tension dissipated and the crowd began to celebrate their victory, Anna and David stood together, breathless and battered but triumphant. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger than ever, their hope for a better future now forged in the fire of adversity. Word of their resilience spread beyond Berlin, reaching the leaders in Israel who recognized this moment as a beacon of hope and possibility. They reached out, expressing solidarity and a shared commitment to peace, reinforcing the bonds that had begun to form. In the months that followed, Berlin transformed. The scars of conflict remained, but they were overshadowed by the vibrant spirit of a community that had learned to unite against hatred. Neighborhoods once divided began to flourish as people came together, sharing stories, cultures, and traditions. Anna and David became symbols of hope, their journey a testament to the strength of humanity to rise above the shadows of the past. They forged connections with leaders from Israel, Europe, and beyond, collaborating on initiatives aimed at promoting understanding and reconciliation. As they stood in the newly rebuilt square, now filled with laughter and life, Anna turned to David, a smile